Welcome to Stories That Stick, a podcast series about the stories that shape us.
You'd have Miss Rupchan, who would walk into a room, class would go silent.
Listeners, before we begin, please know that we start all our conversations with death, because we believe that death truly makes us reflect about the life we live, and we aim, in our own little way, to share the life of our guest. And in today's episode, we have Marcus Bronzy, a presenter that specialises in audio production, and he's best known for his own podcast series called How to Kill an Hour. That being said, we hope you enjoy today's episode. If you died,
Yeah.
do you care how you go?
Yes, I care very much about how I go. I think I would like to be here today, gone tomorrow kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? I want to go out of a bang, shall we say. Because I think as somebody who's quite strong-willed, I kind of relish in the fact that I can get about, I'm mobile, I can do stuff. I'm a big person, you know? To be in a situation where I don't really have control at the end isn't something that I'm really keen on. So, you know, if I had the choice, I'd love to, you know, ideally peacefully pass away in your sleep, or maybe, you know, I'll take a couple of days, a little bit of pain, and then be out, you know, punch my ticket out. Yeah.
Do you believe in an afterlife or anything like that?
I think when we have the conversation around afterlife, and obviously this is very closely related to kind of how people think about religion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's levels to the way that we can perceive life that we don't understand yet. There are levels that, in the same way, I'm going to oversimplify this, in the same way that, you know, the idea of trying to explain flying in a jet to a caveman. It's magic. It's unspeakable. We don't understand it. So I think our energy is dispersed in ways that we can't really comprehend beyond what we kind of think we know all about now. So yes, okay, physically my body will decompose, you know, or my ashes will decompose depending on how I leave. There's levels that we just don't yet understand with things, and I'm very comfortable in my ignorance with that.
Okay, I was going to say, how do you sleep at night? Because it seems like you are someone who's a deep thinker.
The way that I can sleep at night is, and this is one of the most calming things mindsets that I've managed to come across over the years, is just taking time to understand that you don't understand sometimes, you know? So like, there's never going to be enough space in my brain in the state it is now to understand everything. I can be like, oh, you know what? I think I'll just know a lot about a little, you know, and be comfortable with that. It's great being ignorant, man.
Yeah, fair play. And that's why you have a podcast called How to Kill an Hour. So love the title,
Thank
How
you.
to Kill. Speaking of killing, unfortunately, you are dead.
Yeah, I'm dead now. I'm
But
gone.
what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take a walk with me, and we're going to look at the decades of your life. Within the first decade,
Right.
what's one of your fondest memories?
So many fond memories. I think this is the kind of conversation that would change daily if I were to be asked. I grew up in an area called Harlesden, northwest London, and there's a park called Roundwood Park, and there's trees around it, a few little bumps in the pathway, and I had a BMX that I found somewhere near my house. The paintwork was rusty. It was a mess. The seat was a mess, and I took it home. I remember starting off using a rust cleaner. So I found a rust cleaner somewhere. I don't know where I got this from. And it was like this pink fluid, I remember, and you'd like put it on little rusty bits. I left that overnight, washed that rust off, and then, funnily enough, you know, the bike started to look a little bit better without the rust. I had to save some pocket money to get some inner tubes, so I went to a little bike shop, fixed that up. Had to de-rust the chain, had to oil it up using whatever oil I had at the time. I've got this bike going, long story short, and just riding it down the hill and finding little bumps in the track and jumping my BMX and being like, I'm a BMXer now, I'm sick. That's one of the fond memories I had when I was a little kid.
What's also interesting in the fact that it was a project in which, if you look at your life now, you predominantly break things down, you put them together, you're into the tech aspects of the world.
Yeah.
You alluded to it, and I know it was just in passing, but you were saying you didn't have much. What do you mean?
Just financially, I'd say whilst I'm not pulling out my violin and like, I'd just say I was very aware of that I wasn't the kid that had the toy first. I wasn't the kid that had the toy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I remember my friends having a lot of cool things. I mean, oh, right, I'd love that. And I think very rarely at a young age was I the kid that had that. Do you know what I mean? Whether that be trainers or consoles and stuff like that. So for me, a lot of the fun stuff I did, I kind of had to make it fun, build it myself, try it myself. Do you know what I mean?
So let's move on to the next decade.
Okay, cool.
Now, you know where we're going. We're getting to 11 to 20.
11 to 20, wow. Let's go from that 11 years old. I remember that's a big thing for me when I was 11 years old was going to secondary school, because I went to 2 different primary schools. I just moved just because it was a bit easier for me to get to a different primary school. So imagine I had some friends in like year 3, right? That's when you're like 7, 8. So I had some friends from primary school 1, some friends from primary school 2. Now, one of my best friends in primary school 2 moved to another primary school called primary school 3. Now, all of those 3 primary schools fed into the secondary school in my area. So when I went to that secondary school, I was very blessed to have a lot of familiar faces around me. So even though I was in a class with like one of my old school classmates, I actually found that I knew quite a few people across the year. So going into secondary school, whilst it was like very intimidating to be walking past these giants on your first day, eventually when everything settled down in year 7, after the first few weeks, I was quite comfortable at secondary school.
Were you bullied?
Was I bullied? Not in the respect that I think other people would consider bullying. So would we say stuff to each other that was harsh at school? I think my school was probably one of the harshest, right? But it was give it back as you got it kind of thing.
Right.
And I think for me personally, what I learned very early on is that anybody can get slapped. Like that was anybody can get physically challenged, right? And I just saw the hassle of getting in trouble, right? And I was like, that's long.
Trouble from the school, trouble from home, trouble from the environment.
Just getting into trouble. Like I could see that people were starting to make choices that were getting them into trouble in school, out of school, on road. And I was kind of like, it's not interesting to me. So my interest kind of started swinging towards music at that time. And then as I kind of started delving into music and DJing, which kind of led to the radio career stuff later in my life, that kind of gave me a focus. That gave me something again to be creative and hands-on with. And I don't regret kind of moving over with the muso kind of people at the time that were into kind of grime in whatever form it was then, and moving away from some of the people that were just up to badness for badness sake. You know what I mean?
Usually within school, a certain teacher that really you can't help but remember regardless of how old you are. And I believe, Miss Rupchan?
Miss Rupchan. So
Rupchan.
There were many. I just want to like prerequisite say this is probably one of the hardest parts of the conversation to have, because I'm so aware of how many people input into one life. We are a product of thousands of people's lifetimes, and that's just the people that we know, let alone what we read, what we consume. That's knowledge from many people.
I hear that.
But one teacher, her name was Miss Rupchan. Now, I was in a very noisy school. I'll be honest, the school was created because 3 secondary schools closed to create one school. At the time, there were teachers that would come in and shout down the class, "Yo, everybody be quiet." Rah. There were teachers that would give you seating plans. They'd watch you walk into class and, "Oh, is everyone comfortable? Okay, cool. You're never going to sit like that again." You'd have teachers that would, slam the desk, rough up kids a little bit. And then you'd have Miss Rupchan, who would walk into a room and she'd just stand there for like probably only 20 seconds. The class would go silent. She'd just wait patiently, and we'd all just be quiet, and we'd look up to her. And she was softly spoken, but firm as well. Like when she spoke, she meant business. There was a time when I wouldn't say I was being naughty, but I was just a little bit chitty and chatty, and meant that I had to see Miss Rupchan quite a few times. And I remember, I don't think she ever shouted. She never shouted. And I think she just took me into her room one day. She just sat me down and she just looked me in the eyes and said, "Marcus, this behavior is not appropriate. What are we going to do to fix this?" and I sat down and made a plan with her how I was going to fix my behavior in English lessons specifically, and action that plan. So it was very interesting that she chose that approach. Maybe that was just her general approach, but I feel like she spoke directly to me, and we had a conversation, and she almost looked, it was disappointment in her eyes. She looked at me, she's like, you know, you of all people like you yourself, you know what I mean, young black man should not be behaving like this. Yeah, you can do better. That was what she said as well. She says, you can do better. I believe you can do better. And that was one of the experiences from school that really stands with me. And I think Miss Rupchan only just retired a couple of years ago. I came back to the school and I said thank you to her and a few other teachers. Well after I left, she requested that I come in and I talked to some of the students about, you know, media, and I've done that a few times. I felt like that is not even a scratch on what I owe her and people that gave me advice like that when I was that age. So yeah, love you, Miss Rupchan. You're the best.
I see, what a shout out. Honestly, teachers really do help shape the future. And if there's a genuine, authentic, sincere, I could use all these synonyms, you know, where you recognize the individual and not the statistic, or then there's a power in that.
100%. You can be very clinical in the school environment because kids are numbers to a degree. Like there's even the education system, we won't get into it too deeply. The education system in the UK now is going through a change, and there's a lot of money moving around in very interesting ways, and it's up to schools to perform. Now, when you want 1,000 people to perform, how do you maintain a personal approach to them? That's the challenge, right? But for me, it was those elements of personal touches that you got from teachers that can really help guide somebody who's going in the wrong direction. It may not always work, you know. They just what worked for me.
100%. And there's also, everyone always thinks it's like top down, right? But it can actually also be left, right. It can be horizontally.
100%.
To help, you know.
Definitely.
Because I was saying this to a friend of mine, where usually it's a messenger that matters.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. Career-wise, you were saying you start to look at music. Were you putting any content out?
Oh, yeah, man. A good thing about music at that time is it was starting to become slightly less super expensive to be involved in music. There was things like pirate radio. So I was interested in pirate radio. So we would get sets on private radio. There were raves for younger kids that were under 18. So you could try stuff like that as well, you know, in an environment that is designed for us. So, you know, we could legally be in a club and party. There were some of the community centres that I think are really valuable in any community that had decks started turning up and stuff like that, so I could get on decks, you know what I mean? So what was your name? Did you have a my DJ name? DJ Bronzy, man.
Okay,
DJ Bronzy. It's Bronzy from Day. So DJ Bronzy was creating mixtapes. He was, you know, literal tapes, CDs, stuff like that. So, you know, you could distribute, and whether it's just giving a couple of your friends a little mix that you've done, or even if you recorded a few, like, you know, sets off the radio, you give it to your friend, little mini disc CD,
Same
whatever.
for the ladies.
Yeah, oh, everyone had a slow jam CD. Oh, okay, come on. We all had a slow jam CD. So I had like my R&B big hitters, you know, my breaking case of emergency.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and luckily there were quite a few sound boys that were around us. So shout out to Winner Roadshow, Chris Sweeney, New Winner Roadshow, Richie F. You know, there were a lot of people that were in my circle of friends that were very musically inclined. So as I was coming up, my enjoyment of music was nourished by other people that enjoyed music. So that could be a conversation, that could be something we go and try, you know, let's go and get the latest albums, let's see who's got the hottest mix, you know, let's all link up and get on the decks and you see what kind of vibe we can have. And, you know, without realizing it, you're in your own little musical crew. Do you know what I mean? You know, you get your friends, and then, you know, if there's a house party and it ends, you get called to come down, and, you know, you're appreciated as the sound guy. Do you know what I mean? If you come and you do your job well, you have a good time, the ladies and gentlemen enjoy themselves, you're kind of free to observe from the sidelines and get involved as you wish. You know what I mean? It's very good.
Get involved as you wish.
Yeah.
Oh, Marcus, you God. Now we're going into your third decade, 20 plus. There's got to be times or memories that have an imprint. And there's something that you wrote on the prompt questions was, the story of the fisherman. Talk to me about that.
So this is something that resonates really heavily with me, and I've read this in very many iterations, and it's something that it's actually something that has become more relevant to me now more than ever. So in this story, there's a very successful businessman and a retired fisherman. He goes to the fisherman, "Oh, I see you caught a good few fish today. Like, you know, you done all right." Fisherman's like, "Yeah." He goes, "How many fish do you catch every day?" He goes, "Catch a couple for myself. Might sell one or give one away, you know." And the businessman goes, "Well, you could do so much more." And the fisherman goes, "Like what?" He goes, "You know, you could stay out fishing for twice as long. You've only been fishing for a few hours, you know, you double your catch." And the fisherman says, "And then what?" He goes, "Once you double your catch, you can sell more, make more money." And the fisherman goes, "Well, then what?" He goes, "You know, buy another boat, employ somebody, get twice the amount of fish again, get them to work all day for you." And the fisherman goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Then you have a fleet of boats." Fisherman then says, "And then what?" He goes, "Then your company's pulling in millions. You're doing so well. You can invest in property, take that money, move it all around the world. You can see everything you want to see." And the fisherman goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Then you can retire and enjoy that." And the fisherman says, "And then what?" And the rich man says, "You can do whatever you want." And the fisherman says, like, "Go and catch some fish every day, give a couple away and relax." So that story resonates with me, and it's kind of helped me to kind of start to think about the whole plan, you know. So that's why I'm very comfortable talking about death, because I think it's unavoidable, man. It's happening. Like, we should be having conversations a lot. Yeah, it's a serious thing. You shouldn't trivialize it, but you know, it helps you to kind of think about, you know, where are your priorities in life? Like, where do you want to be? What's the end goal?
No, that's a great story, and that definitely resonates with me personally as well. There's a gentleman called Tim Ferriss. He has the 4-hour work week, and he speaks about mini retirement. So you actually see whether or not what you assume you want to do in retirement is something you actually can see yourself doing for an indefinite period of time.
Yeah, and he's a great example as well, because he's somebody who has retired, but he's working the hardest he ever has in his life, because that's his fishing. That's the point. I'm not trying to tell you as a listener, go and fish. I don't even like fishing, Marcus. But, you know, find your fishing is the kind of thing that I've taken from that.
Speaking about finding your fishing, explain to the audience, if that's okay, like what it is you're doing, and, you know, how we can get on board if you want us to get on board.
100%. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, everyone can get on my fishing boat. So in essence, I am a presenter, right? But in 2019, it means that you are required to do a lot more as a presenter. Social media and whatnot. It's obvious, we won't get into that. So part of my journey as a presenter has taken me from working for big corporations like the BBC, Global, CBBC, whatever. And I've learned lots and lots from those big companies, and I still continue to do content with them. It's great. But with regards to podcasting, we launched How to Kill an Hour. I started off just myself and DJ Ace, who I knew from the radio days. And then, you know, we've expanded to a selection of great presenters and regular contributors. I'll name some of the amazing ones like Dev, the Nick Bright, Funk Butcher. And it's just grown as a show that used to discuss technology and tech in a way that, you know, I'm not a tech guru. Like, we're enthusiasts. And I think that who's better to tell you about whether they like something or not? Somebody who's a fan and super into the numbers, or someone that says that if I say, Ade, look, this, for example, we covered camera phones recently. People are going to me, what phone's the best for a selfie? What phone's the best to take pictures of landscape? What phone's got the best camera for this? And so we just took some cameras out and tested them on phones, and we can have that general conversation. Like, for example, you know, this phone's amazing for this. This is great in low light. And we really found that there's a market for that. Now we found a podcast studio, put some, you know, really good mics in there, you know, set up some visualization services. And now we've got a studio that we can create our own podcast in. The side effect of that was loads of people going, oh, yeah, this studio's all right, bro. Like, can I hire it out? I was like, nah, it's not for hire. Oh, this is lovely as well. Can I hire it out? Nah, it's not for hire. And I was like, oh, hang on, there's a business here. And then Podcast Studio London was born. So Podcast Studio in London, surprise, surprise. And we now offer services to help people with productions of podcasts. The thing that we have that's different that we bring to the table is my methodology comes from radio production over the years, presenting over the years. And when I say I produce radio, I still do actively produce national radio as well as presenting. So I know how this stuff works. But what I want to do with the space is as we grow, like we're at capacity at the moment. So I'd like to grow so we can have more clients that we can take on. And also within that, I'd like to offer podcasting services to people that would not access it. And we said this before we press record. I don't just want to give you the mic and let you press record. I can do that if you want, if you really want to do it, but I'm talking about like proper production. Like, let's take some fine ideas and let's give them the support that we would have benefited from a few years ago. Do you know what I mean? Or even as if we were younger out there. Could you imagine if somebody said to us, let's make Blacticulate, but they gave you support. They helped to accelerate that process. So that's something I'd really like to do, because there's not enough young black voices. Well, there are enough, but they're not being heard. Do you know what I mean? So I want to help people, you know what I mean? Like that. So that's the idea.
Before I do let you go, is there anything that you would like just to leave as an imprint on those who are listening to your story right now? Is there anything that you might think, oh,
it's just my story, it's not yours.
No.
So this is a very selfish conversation from me, very self-indulgent conversation where I've got to talk you through what's gone in my life, but it's not my life, it's yours. So I think you and I, we were at a live podcast event, and somebody who was watching the show said to one of the presenters, how can I be more like you? And the presenter was like, nah, you can't be like me, you're you. And I'm not trying to say this in an obnoxious way. Like, there are people that are way more successful than me, people that aren't as successful as me, but like what's helped me to learn, maybe there's a nugget in there, maybe the fisherman story, maybe the Rupchan story helps you or whatever, but like, just focus on your own path, do you know what I mean? And like, that's where the happiness is, where you find your path and you're happy with what you output. Do you know what I mean? Because realistically, when I think about what I've done for most of my life, really, I've kind of just done what I've enjoyed, but I've made sure that I worked really hard on it so that it brings home the bacon at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So like, find your fishing. There we go. I like that. Find your fishing.
I really like that. So guys, we're going to end it at that. Marcus, thanks very much for joining us. The stories that stick. Today's episode was produced by Ade Bambala, sound designed by Chris Arise, and if you'd like to be featured on Stories That Stick, then please do get in touch. Blacticulate Productions.